I was going over the report, and in the details, what surprised me was statistics can always be very funny and can throw up some results which are absolutely shocking. And what shocked me in this particular report was the third column. I was obviously very interested in the column which represents my country. And when I was going over that, Lithuania was ahead of me. So I was pretty surprised about that. Then Oman, Slovakia, Costa Rica, Latvia. So that is the funny part of the statistics, and how statistics unfolds itself, whether in dimension or in terms of development or in growth. That is what was surprising. So I think one needs to really get more into the detail of the stat. And another aspect which surprised me was countries which were ahead of me, immediately ahead of me: Morocco, Greece, if there's anyone responsible for the European crisis and the kind of things which are happening in Europe, and then Romania, Panama. We heard about Panama leaks recently, and with Panama leaks we talk about law and order situation, because law also talks about not just the right to property but the right to privacy also. So as and when Panama could be used as for an investment destination, it was used as an investment destination. Didn't have any issues in getting the money. So if the rules were of a certain nature, then rules should be at the time when you are seeking investments. At that time you want to seek anybody and everybody's investment without going into the detail of what is legitimate, what is illegitimate. And finally, when you want to leak out papers, you leak out whichever paper you want. And when it comes to IPR gradation, you are ahead of India. That surprised me. So, but as a policy maker, as a part of policy decisions, I think indexes always help us in deciding whatever improvements we need to make. And as a person who's representing my country, I obviously want my country to do extremely well, because I know, not because I love my country, that of course we all do love our respective countries, but also the fact that the potential India has, especially in terms of intellectual property, is immense. The intellectual property is surely in the nature of intellect and intellectual capacities and capabilities of Indians. I have complete faith in. I think we are one of the brightest lot on this planet. And because we are sharp, intelligent people, we need to set our house in order on many different aspects in terms of law and order, in terms of policy, polity, corruption-free society. And if any result needs to be seen, the results will be seen in coming a few months or a year, because we have made we have taken so many policy decisions in terms of ease of doing business, in terms of GST, which has been recently reformed, base society tax reforms, and bringing everyone under Jan Dhan Yojana, trying to reach out to people, and the sheer population and humanity India is dealing with, and sheer history of India, where more than 800 years of rule, when India was called the golden bird, and the gold was constantly extracted out of India through all kinds of illegitimate means. So all kind of exploitation that Indian society has gone over, but credit to the people of this country who are highly skilled intellectually, and little bit of policy measures, if are tweaked, we can and we will be the economic steering wheel which will steer the globe. And going over the sustainable development and BRICS formulation, which I've been working on right now, very basic things I feel the world needs to have a relook at. I'm going to discuss something, because before I entered, health was being discussed. And I am coming from a WHO conference on accessibility. So I am overloaded with the health issues and I'm overloaded with the sanitation issues. So don't mind my sharing that platform, because I think that is another platform which can change the way globe looks at the sanitation aspects, because end of the day, human beings, if the population is going to grow or population is going to decrease, we will have all the health issues, we will have all the accessibility issues, and we will also need to work on two platforms. The column 1 countries. The column 1 countries will have to work on their consumption patterns, because when you talk about sustainable development goals, nobody talks about the consumption patterns of the developed world, and which is the unfortunate part, because if developed world had decent consumption patterns, then probably world would be a better place in any case. But they do not work on their consumption patterns. They want the third world countries to work on their consumption patterns, who in any case are ill-fed and who in any case are using less energy. So the third world countries or developing countries need to work on their population control measures. For the earth to be sustainable, the wrongs need to be corrected, and wrongs do not exist only in the underdeveloped or developing world. The wrongs exist even in the developing countries, so or in the developed countries. So in the developed countries, I was going over the columns of countries of the column 1. The countries in the column 1 are the biggest consumers of the world's resources. Nobody talks about consumption patterns of the developed world. And the column 3 and other countries, and especially the BRICS countries, are the most populous countries. So they need to work on their population control measures. If either of the two is not managed right, the world will become unsustainable. And the unsustainability will lead to the collapse of every system. So IPR, PPRI, everything, because I saw, which are very, very nicely designed columns, are very interesting columns, except the statistics have shown certain figures which do not match my understanding. So maybe either my understanding is faulty or statistics are incomplete, or certain other parameters need to be added to the statistics, which will show us a greater picture. Because Greece ahead of India, when India has granted assistance to Greece, I remember that when there was European crisis, our then Prime Minister, Mr. Manmohan Singh, went and gave assistance to Greece because Europe was not in a position, and US chose not to assist. That country is ahead of India in this column. China, where you do not find, even today, their currency and several transparency issues exist in that country, which probably has not been taken into account, and that is why China, in terms of law and order, is ahead of India is unthinkable to me. Transparency, democratic framework is very, very important for any political system, and China is ahead of India, which is pretty shocking to an Indian. And I think the policymakers across the world need to recognize, that when we talk about sustainable development, sustainable wages, and the methodologies which are getting used, China gives no access to anybody of any sort. But I guess it's the cost factor that for their own consumption patterns, the developed world depends on getting things made in China, and the cost effective methods, so they choose not to question on certain basic parameters. And I think if world really needs to be sustained, then transparency of systems and political system also must be brought forward. Couple of things on of course I can claim lack of knowledge because I have only gone over what is supplied to me. I do not have the detailed research, and that I'm sure is a book by itself, and people who have researched have gone into those details. For me, uh, my ranking is, I think, 52. We are working on certain basic aspects: ease of doing business, transforming taxation, bringing everyone under the proper system of financial availability, availability of loans to those who need it the most, through Mudra Bank, sustainable development, giving rise to technologies, innovation. We've been working at breakneck speed, and we still need to work because the sheer population and the size of this country, if even a small impact needs to be made, even 1% growth means so much more work needs to get into bringing that thing in place, because it is not as cohesive as it may look. I mean, we are a very cohesive society when it comes to nationalism, which GST has shown. We are a very cohesive society when it comes to patriotic Indian geography, as most of us have the same opinion about most issues. Inclusive society also, we are all on the same platform. But maybe in complexion we look different, in dresses we look different, we look different in our religious ideologies, so on and so forth. But when it comes to nationalism and nationality or economic policy, one tax regime, one market also is the future we all look at positively. So cohesion is there, and yet diversification within that cohesion exists, and I think that's one of the finest model which any country can have in the world. At the same time, when it comes to regimes, regiments, the law and order here is pretty much ordered, but again it goes back to the economic constraints. The number of judges per population ratio compared to other countries is low, and again it boils down to what kind of economic activity can we spurt to give us that edge over others. In terms of innovation, we can compete with any of the countries, the best of them we can compete, but I think it is the economic drawback which keeps us held back, and economic spurt will definitely generate more employment, more GDP, and sustainable goals will be easier for us to achieve. And at the same time, when it comes to positioning, placing countries or studying, I think a more sociological, in-depth knowledge about those countries will help in create a better atmosphere, because otherwise we get a lopsided picture, and that's where I feel the statistics have its own importance, and statistics always help us in formulating policies better, but the lopsided pictures always lead to distortion, and distortions is what I have pointed out to you. Those distortions need to be corrected for the correct placements. That is for everyone, because sometimes people only pick up one statistic to use it as a whip to whip the other country, which is incorrect. Because from my perspective, if I'm a constructive person who works on policies, I would say, okay, I'm 52nd, I need to improve my position, I need to work on the better measures. I will take it positively, but if there are countries who are themselves non-transparent, non-performers, and non-law abiding, use my position to whip me internationally, is what people like me will not take it kindly, and then they will start pointing fault in the system of analysis itself. And that's where my apprehensions are coming from, because no statistic can be used to whip others, especially the ones who are doing the right things, to do the correct methodologies and are working on the right perspective. That is the only concern I have. With these words, thank you, friends. Thank you very much.